They told her to get out. No warning, no discussion, just a cold command from the doorway of the house she once called home. Her daughter stood firm, arms crossed, judgment in her eyes. Beside her, the daughter's white boyfriend watched in silence, with a smirk that said more than words ever could. "You're not helping, you're just in the way," the daughter muttered. So she walked, slowly, quietly, no anger, no tears, just a small bag and the weight of being unwanted. To most, she was just another old black woman, invisible, replaceable, but behind that silence, she carried a secret. For decades, she had worked hard, cleaning homes, caring for other people's children, saving every penny. She endured racism, humiliation, long nights, and empty stomachs. And while no one noticed, she built a future, a quiet fortune, over $1,700,000, hidden, protected, untouched, not out of greed, but out of survival. She knew the world would never see her worth, so she learned to guard it herself. And now the very people who pushed her away were turning their backs on everything she had built. But this story isn't just about hidden money. It's about how we treat those we think have nothing. It's about what we miss when we judge by appearances. And it's about the quiet, unstoppable strength of black women who carry generations of pain and still keep giving. Before we go deeper, if this moment touched you, take a second to like this video. Not just for the algorithm, but so stories like hers aren't forgotten. Comment below if you've ever seen someone's value ignored because of how they look, how they live, or how little they say. And subscribe if you believe in honoring voices that the world tries to silence. Let's uncover what they never saw in her, and what she never needed them to see. The door slammed shut behind her. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an accident. It was deliberate, final, cold. She stood on the front porch, holding a single duffel bag, the same porch where she'd once braided her daughter's hair, taught her to pray, and wiped her tears after childhood disappointments. Now that daughter stood inside, arms crossed, lips tight, as if cutting her mother out of her life was just another item on her to-do list. "You'll be fine," her daughter muttered. "She's been dragging us down for months," the boyfriend added, not even bothering to lower his voice. The woman didn't answer. She had learned long ago that silence was a form of survival. But inside something cracked. Not from the pain of being kicked out, she had endured far worse. It was the fact that her own blood, her own child, looked at her with eyes that no longer held love, only calculation, only shame. The boyfriend leaned against the wall with smug confidence, as if this house, once hers, was now his kingdom. He'd arrived only a year ago, but his influence was deep. He convinced her daughter that the mother's presence was a weight, a symbol of poverty, a reminder of where they came from, not where they wanted to go, and her daughter believed him. What they didn't know, what they never even cared to ask, was everything she had sacrificed to make sure they had a roof over their heads. Every late-night cleaning shift, every missed doctor appointment because she couldn't afford to stop working, every meal she skipped so her daughter could eat a little more. And now she was being pushed out like forgotten furniture. "Just until we figure things out," the daughter had said, but her tone was cold, final. There was no plan to bring her back. It wasn't about space. It wasn't about money. It was about shame. The boyfriend didn't like the way she looked at him, with eyes that saw through his charm. He didn't like the way she moved around the kitchen, like she still belonged. He wanted her gone, and the daughter, eager to please, didn't resist. So the woman left. She walked slowly down the sidewalk, not looking back. She didn't ask for help, didn't beg, didn't cry because she knew something they didn't. They thought they were kicking out a poor, helpless old woman, but they were pushing away a storm wrapped in silence, a legacy dressed in worn clothes, a fortune hidden beneath a lifetime of being ignored. They didn't know about the envelopes hidden beneath the floorboards, the savings account that had quietly grown over decades, the life insurance policies, the investments, the safety deposit box. They didn't know they were turning their backs on $1,700,000 and on the woman who built it all while they barely noticed her. But she knew, and for the first time in years, as the door closed behind her, she smiled, not out of spite, not out of revenge, but because she realized something powerful. They could take the room, they could take the chair she sat in, but they could never take her worth. And now, for the first time, she was free to live on her own terms. Long before she was just an old lady in the back room, she had a name that meant something, a voice that once filled spaces with laughter, a heart that carried generations of stories, dreams, and scars. Her name was Clara, Born in the rural South during segregation, Clara came into a world that had already decided her worth. She was told what she couldn't do, where she couldn't go, what she shouldn't expect. But Clara was never loud about her resistance. She resisted by surviving, by building a life quietly, brick by brick, in a world that didn't expect her to make it past the margins. She married young, lost her husband early, raised her only daughter working double shifts, cleaning motels by day, scrubbing offices by night. She never asked for help. She just did what had to be done. When her daughter was 10, Clara walked 5 miles every evening to night school, just to earn a high school diploma. She knew the world wouldn't hand her anything, but she believed education might help her daughter escape the trap she had lived through. She never missed a school meeting, never missed a rent payment, never missed a moment to show up, even when exhausted, even when invisible. People underestimated her because she didn't talk much, but Clara listened. She watched. She remembered. She knew which neighbors borrowed and never returned. She knew which bosses lied about hours. She knew when her daughter started changing, not just in teenage rebellion, but in the way she began to look at her mother as someone small, someone outdated. Still, Clara kept giving. When her daughter lost her first job, Clara paid the bills. When her daughter got pregnant, Clara raised the child while her daughter tried to figure things out. When the white boyfriend came around, Clara kept her distance, but she saw the subtle shift. The way he walked around like the house already belonged to him, the way he called her "ma'am" with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Even when they started whispering behind closed doors, even when they moved her into the smallest room in the house, even when her coffee mug disappeared from the kitchen shelf, she said nothing. Because Clara knew what they didn't. She was never powerless. She was never dependent. She had been quietly building something they couldn't see, under the mattress, inside a locked metal box beneath the floorboards, in 3 separate savings accounts under a name. No one in that house even remembered. Clara had built a net beneath herself, so that when they finally pushed her off the ledge, she wouldn't fall. She would rise. They thought she stayed silent because she had nothing. In truth, she stayed silent because she had everything, just not the kind of everything they understood. And when she walked out that door, she wasn't walking away from comfort. She was walking back into her power. She left behind more than just a room. She left behind a history of giving more than she got, a legacy of quiet resistance, as the painful truth that even the ones she loved the most never truly saw her. But now the world would, because Clara's silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy, and her story was only just beginning. Her daughter's name was Denise. She had her mother's eyes, the same deep brown, the same quiet intensity, but somewhere along the way something shifted. Denise had grown up watching her mother sacrifice. She remembered the late nights, the hand-me-down shoes, the dinners that always seemed smaller when rent was due. She remembered her mother's hands, rough from work, gentle in love. But over time, she stopped seeing the woman behind the struggle. She only saw the struggle. To Denise, her mother became a symbol of everything she wanted to escape: poverty, exhaustion, invisibility. So when she met Todd, the man who promised something different, calm, comfort, upward mobility, she grabbed on tight. Todd wasn't cruel, not at first. He was charming, helpful, full of solutions. He called Denise babe and opened doors. He spoke with confidence, the kind of confidence Denise had rarely seen up close. But with time, his charm grew colder. He made jokes about Clara's old-fashioned ways. He sighed when Clara asked to turn the TV down. He complained when she cooked smelly food. At first, Denise defended her mother. She's been through a lot. She means well. She's just trying to help. But Todd didn't let up. She doesn't pay rent. She's always in the way. Why do we have to take care of her? Denise started to flinch under the pressure. She didn't want to admit it, but part of her agreed. Part of her was tired of living in a space that still felt like her mother's house. Tired of hearing Clara's quiet footsteps at night. Tired of feeling like a daughter when she wanted to feel like a woman. So she began to pull away. Conversations grew shorter. Requests became commands. Her tone sharpened. Her patience thinned. Clara noticed. She noticed the way her coffee cup disappeared. The way her seat at the table was never set. The way the house no longer smelled like home. She watched her daughter disappear into someone else, someone more guarded, more performative, more eager to impress than to protect. Todd had never experienced the world through Clara's eyes. He had never felt what it meant to walk into a store and be followed, or to be talked down to at a job interview. He didn't understand what Clara had survived, and he didn't care to learn. Instead, he saw her as a problem to be solved. And Denise, caught between loyalty and longing, chose the path that felt easiest. But what Denise never stopped to consider was why her mother never asked for anything, why she never complained, why she kept a lockbox hidden in her closet, why she double-checked the mail, why she always insisted on being fine. Because Clara had learned long ago that the world, even your own blood, could turn cold. She'd been preparing her whole life for abandonment, not because she expected it, but because she'd seen it too many times to ignore the possibility. So when Denise finally said, "Maybe it's time you found somewhere else to stay," Clara didn't flinch. She just looked into her daughter's eyes, the same eyes she had once wiped clean after nightmares, and said, "I understand." Denise thought she had won something. She didn't know what she had just thrown away. Todd thought he had cleared the path for comfort. He didn't know he had just pushed away a foundation built on sacrifice, loyalty, and hidden strength. And Clara, she walked away without needing to explain herself, because when people choose not to listen, silence becomes its own language. The words didn't come like a shout, they came like a knife, calm, sharp, deliberate. "You don't help, Mama. You just get in the way." Clara stood in the hallway, one hand still holding the edge of the doorway, as if bracing herself from falling into some invisible hole. Denise didn't even look up from her phone. It was the phrase that had echoed, unspoken for months. Now it was out loud. Now it was final. Clara had always known her presence was shrinking in that house. She took up less space, made less noise, ate later, washed dishes before anyone asked, folded blankets no one thanked her for. She tried to be invisible, and it worked. Too well. Todd leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching the moment like a spectator at a show he had written himself. "She doesn't pay for anything," he said flatly. "She doesn't do anything." Clara wanted to ask, "What do you know about what I've done?" But she didn't. She wanted to remind them how she took care of Denise's child for 5 years while Denise worked night shifts and studied, how she paid off the light bill for 3 months when Todd got laid off, how she never asked for rent, never asked for credit, never even asked for her own room. But Clara had never been one to beg for acknowledgement. She just stood there quiet, with every line in her face carrying a memory they had already forgotten. Todd stepped in closer. "She's not helping you grow, Denise. She's keeping you in that same old pattern. You want to move forward or not?" And there it was. Clara wasn't a person anymore. She was a pattern, an obstacle, a symbol of the past her daughter wanted to leave behind. "You're always quiet, Mama," Denise said, her voice growing hard. "You never say what you want. You never do anything to help. You're just there." Clara blinked slowly. She remembered every birthday she stayed up to decorate with her last dollars, every Sunday meal cooked while her own bones ached, every time she gave Denise the biggest piece of meat and took the smallest. But now she was just there. Invisible love becomes invisible pain. And still, Clara didn't raise her voice, because she knew that yelling would only prove their point. In silence, she walked to her room. She picked up the duffel bag she had packed 2 weeks ago, just in case. She opened the drawer where a photograph of Denise at age 8 still sat, smiling, gap-toothed and proud. She looked at it one last time. Then she zipped up her bag and walked to the front door. Todd didn't move. Denise didn't either. "I'll call you tomorrow," Denise said. But even she didn't believe it. Clara stepped outside, the air colder than she remembered. She took a breath, steady and long, and walked down the steps of the house she once made a home. "You don't help," Denise had said. But the truth was, Clara had helped her whole life, helped in ways too quiet to be measured, too consistent to be noticed. And now, walking away, Clara understood something Denise didn't. Some help doesn't come with noise. Some love doesn't come with proof. And some value doesn't need to be seen to be real. It started with a $10 bill, folded carefully, tucked into the seam of an old Bible, hidden away where no one would look. Clara had just finished cleaning a dentist's office, her second job that week. Her back ached, her shoes were worn, but that night something shifted. She looked at that $10 bill and thought, "I may not have much, but I'll never be empty again." That was the beginning. She didn't tell anyone, not Denise, not friends, not co-workers. Clara had seen too many people lose everything they had to trust, to theft, to desperation. She had learned early, silence could protect what words might destroy. So she saved, little by little, dollar by dollar, tip by tip, gift cards from holiday shifts, coins from under couches, every bit counted. She opened a savings account under her maiden name, barely used, barely touched, a place the world forgot. Perfect. She never lived beyond her means, never bought anything brand new. She washed clothes by hand, reused foil, walked instead of taking the bus. Every habit the world called poor, she turned into strategy. The money grew slowly, then faster. She picked up a weekend gig watching over elderly patients overnight. She started cooking meals for neighbors too busy to make their own. She cut hair in her kitchen on Sundays after church. No one ever thought she was building something. That's what made it powerful. The ones who looked at her, head down, shoulders soft, never imagined she had a plan. That was Clara's advantage. They saw her as tired. She was focused, and over time she learned to move her money smartly. She met a kind black banker once, an older gentleman who didn't talk down to her. He helped her split her savings across multiple accounts, taught her about CDs and low-risk investments. No questions, no judgment. She never told anyone, because she knew the moment people saw what she had, they'd stop seeing who she was. By the time Denise invited her to live with them, Clara already had over $1 million quietly spread across banks and boxes. She didn't move in because she needed help. She moved in because she thought she could help. She thought maybe in that shared space she could pass down some wisdom, maybe rebuild the closeness she and Denise once had. But instead, they made her smaller, and she let them in for a while, because she didn't need to prove anything. She already knew her worth. She had it written in bank ledgers, safety deposit boxes, and hand-scrawled notebooks kept under her mattress. She had it in deeds and insurance papers. In the gold ring she never wore but never sold, in the way she never had to say, "I told you so." They saw her as disposable. She saw herself as prepared. The world had taught her to expect very little, so she learned to multiply what little she had. Now, walking away from the house that turned cold, she wasn't just leaving behind pain. She was stepping into the quiet victory of a life lived wisely, unseen, uncelebrated, but unshakable. Her wealth wasn't just in dollars, it was in foresight, in patience, in knowing that one day the truth would rise, and when it did, it would speak louder than anything she ever said. It started with a phone call. A banker left a voicemail. "This is regarding Ms. Clara Jenkins's account. We noticed an unusual transfer." Denise stared at the message, confused. Her mother hadn't lived with them for weeks. She assumed Clara had found a shelter, maybe moved in with some old friend from church. She hadn't thought much about it, just relief that the tension was gone. But the next day, a letter arrived, official looking, from a credit union Clara had never mentioned. And the numbers didn't make sense. 6 digits followed by a decimal. Denise read it twice, then a third time. She turned pale. Todd took the paper from her hands. "Wait, is this saying she has over $1 million?" They sat in silence, reality sinking in like a slow, shameful tide. That night, Denise barely slept. She opened drawers, looked under the bed, found an old folder with bank stamps, tax forms, handwritten notes. Clara had been building this for years, decades even, and never said a word. There were checks from long-forgotten clients, receipts from odd jobs, investment statements, all clean, all legal. Denise started to shake. Todd paced the room. "She lied to us." "No," Denise said, almost whispering. "We never asked." And that was the truth. They had assumed, they had judged, they had treated her like a freeloader, a silent burden, all while Clara had more security than either of them ever dreamed of. Todd's voice hardened. "She could have helped us, paid off the car, covered the rent when I got laid off. She let us struggle." Denise looked down. Clara had paid the rent, more than once, quietly, without asking for credit, and they hadn't said thank you. They hadn't even noticed. Now everything felt twisted. The woman they had pushed out, disrespected, dismissed. She held more financial power than both of them combined, and she never once used it against them. That was what hurt most. She never flaunted, never lectured, never punished. She just left. Denise started calling, left voicemails, texted, "Mama, I'm sorry, can we talk?" No answer. She even drove by the old neighborhood, went to the church, asked friends. Nothing. Clara was gone, not lost, just free, unreachable by apology, unaffected by regret. Denise sat in the kitchen one night, staring at the empty chair where her mother used to drink her tea. She remembered how Clara used to hum softly in the mornings, how she folded towels perfectly, how she touched Denise's hair with care, even when Denise had no patience left. And now all Denise could feel was the silence she used to ignore. Todd tried to move on quickly. He suggested they try to contact the bank again, see what's going on. But Denise didn't respond, because deep down she knew This wasn't about money anymore. This was about what they'd thrown away. They didn't lose a bank account. They lost a woman who had stood by them in storms without needing praise. They lost the presence that made the house feel like home, even when no one said it aloud. They lost the chance to truly know her. Clara didn't vanish out of spite. She vanished because she was finally done being invisible. And as Denise sat in the silence she once craved, the wealth her mother left behind didn't shine like victory. It burned with shame. She was only 7 when she first understood what silence could do. Clara stood next to her mother, clutching a paper bag filled with broken apples, the ones no one wanted, the ones the store clerk tossed into a box behind the counter. They waited quietly while white customers were served first. No eye contact, no complaints, that was the rule. Her mother squeezed her hand. "Patience," she whispered. "Dignity ain't loud." That moment stayed with Clara forever. It was the beginning of a life defined not by noise, but by strength beneath the surface. She was raised in a house where water leaked through the roof, but no one ever stopped praying. Where the dinner table was small, but everyone was fed, even neighbors who had less. Where her father came home with dirt under his nails and pride in his spine. By 14, Clara was working weekends cleaning motel rooms. By 16, she was the one waking up early to make her siblings breakfast before school. College was a dream too far, not because she wasn't smart, but because life had already decided her place. Then came the baby, Denise. Clara was only 19. The father disappeared before Denise learned to walk, but Clara never spoke ill of him. She just worked harder. 3 jobs, no days off. She cleaned offices at night, cooked in a cafeteria during the day, and sold homemade pies on Saturdays. Not because she wanted to, but because she had to. She learned to sew so she could mend Denise's clothes, learned to stretch one chicken into 3 meals, learned to swallow her exhaustion when Denise needed a bedtime story. She cried, but never where Denise could see. She screamed, but only into pillows. Every moment of her adult life was sacrifice stitched into silence, and still, she found joy in small things, in the sound of gospel on Sunday mornings, in the smell of fresh bread, in Denise's laughter, back when that laughter still reached her eyes. She remembered the day Denise graduated high school, the pride, the tears, and the moment a few years later when Denise said, "I need your help with the baby." Clara didn't hesitate. She became a mother all over again, waking up at dawn to make bottles, holding that baby through fevers, nightmares, and first words. She didn't complain, didn't remind anyone of what she gave up, because to her, family wasn't a favor, it was a vow. But over the years she noticed the shift. Denise stopped asking about her day, stopped thanking her, started saying things like, "You wouldn't understand," and "times are different now." And slowly, Clara's role became less clear, less seen, less respected. But she never stopped loving, never stopped serving, because Clara didn't need recognition to feel rooted. Her identity was in the doing, in the survival. And when the world closed in on her, and when Denise pushed her out, when Todd dismissed her, those memories didn't break her, they built her. Each sacrifice was a stone in the foundation beneath her feet. Each act of endurance was armor. Each quiet decision to keep going made her unshakable. That's why she could walk away without turning back. Because she knew every ounce of pain she carried had already taught her how to survive the next blow. Her silence wasn't emptiness, it was history, and her history was power. They expected her to disappear, to vanish into some small apartment in a forgotten part of town, maybe show up years later, bitter, broken, needing help. But Clara didn't vanish. She chose. She found a modest, sunlit home on the edge of a quiet neighborhood. Not flashy, not big, just peaceful. She paid for it in full. No mortgage, no credit check. She handed the bank manager a cashier's check with steady hands, eyes firm. The woman at the bank asked, "Is this a gift from someone?" Clara smiled gently. "No, baby. It's mine." That was her first statement. Not in words, but in action. No press, no announcement, just a black woman reclaiming space the world said she'd never deserve. Next, she went to the community center, where she used to take Denise as a child. It was falling apart. Outdated computers, water-stained ceilings, broken chairs. Clara walked in and asked for the director. She didn't ask what they needed. She told them, "I'm going to help." She created a fund, quiet, anonymous. Named it after her own mother, the Lillian Fund for Dignity and Education. It covered GED programs, transportation for seniors, free meals for after-school kids, all the things she had once gone without. When the director asked why, she simply said, "Because someone should." And that's how the ripple began. No one knew at first. Even Denise didn't find out, not right away. But one day, while scrolling through her feed, Denise saw a post. Local donor saves center from closing. Impact felt across generations. She paused, clicked the photo. It was Clara, smiling, at peace, surrounded by children. Denise stared, read the caption twice. Clara hadn't called to brag, hadn't posted about it herself. She just did what she had always done, give, quietly, fully, with purpose. Todd scoffed when he saw it. Guess she wants to be the hero now. But Denise said nothing, because deep down she knew this wasn't about being seen. This was about never being invisible again. Clara never responded to their messages, never returned their calls. She didn't have to. Her silence was no longer about survival. It was a declaration. She wasn't interested in revenge. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She was building something bigger, something they would never be part of, because they had shown themselves too small to carry it. One afternoon, Clara sat on her porch, watching the sunset with a cup of tea. A teenager from the center walked up, handed her a drawing. It showed Clara with a cape standing in front of the building. "You're like a real-life superhero," the girl said. Clara smiled. "Not a hero, baby, just someone who kept receipts." Because every overlooked moment, every insult, every dismissal became the fire that fueled her, not to punish, but to build. She didn't need her daughter's validation. She didn't need Todd's approval. She had found something far greater: clarity, freedom, and the right to decide what her life meant on her own terms. Clara never wanted statues, never needed applause. She just wanted to leave something that would keep speaking when she no longer could, and that's exactly what she did. Months after she created the Lillian Fund for Dignity and Education, the results began to show. A young mother, barely 20, walked across a small stage with her GED diploma in hand, her first step toward nursing school. She cried as she held her baby in one arm and the certificate in the other. When asked how she managed to study and care for her child, she simply said, "Somebody believed I could." She never met Clara, but Clara changed her life. At the senior center, a new wheelchair van arrived and fully paid. Elders who had felt trapped for years now took trips to the doctor, the market, even the park. And when they asked where it came from, the staff just smiled. A woman who knows what it feels like to be ignored. Each change Clara set in motion was like a small rebellion, a silent, powerful correction to a world that had overlooked too many for too long. She started a scholarship, not for straight-A students or star athletes, but for the invisible kids, the ones with potential no one ever saw, the ones who reminded her of herself. The foundation received hundreds of thank you letters, many addressed simply to the woman who didn't forget us. The board of the community center eventually insisted on honoring her publicly. They wanted a plaque, a dedication ceremony, a banner with her name. Clara declined. Instead, she asked for something different. No names, just make the front bench bigger, for the ones who need to sit and breathe. That was her legacy, not built in her image but in her memory, not to be remembered by face but by impact. Even Denise from a distance began to understand. She heard stories from neighbors, watched videos of community events where Clara appeared briefly, smiling, always standing behind others instead of in front. One day Denise visited the community center. No one recognized her. She stood in the hallway where Clara had once dropped off donations, filled out forms, asked nothing in return. On a bulletin board near the door was a drawing, made by a child, a picture of a house, a woman with gray hair, and the words, "She made things better." That was all. And somehow that was everything. Clara's wealth wasn't just in numbers, it was in the lives she shifted, the dignity she restored, the message she left behind. That value isn't loud, that love isn't owed, that some legacies are built in silence, but live forever in action. Years later, the center expanded. More classrooms, a garden, a program to teach young girls financial literacy. And though her name wasn't on the building, everyone knew who made it possible. Not the loudest, not the richest, not the most visible, just Clara, the woman who left quietly and changed everything after she did. What if it were your mother? What if the woman who held your hand through fevers, who skipped meals so you could eat, who sat in silence just to make sure you were okay, was the same woman you ignored? What if she sat in the corner of your home, quiet, tired, carrying years of sacrifice in her bones, and you never once asked what she had been through? What if the person you treated as a burden was actually the foundation beneath your feet? Because Clara's story isn't just hers. It's the story of thousands of black women, mothers, grandmothers, caretakers, whose names aren't in history books, whose voices are rarely heard, but whose presence built entire families, entire communities. And still they are called too much, too old in the way. We talk about dignity, but where is it when the world reduces them to a spare room, a forgotten seat at the table, a silent shadow in the hallway? We call them strong, but strength without honor is just another form of abandonment. Clara's story hurts because it's real, because you can see her face in someone you know, because maybe, just maybe, you've looked past someone who deserved your full attention, and maybe you're not the only one. We've built a world that worships noise, youth, visibility, and punishes patience, age, and humility. We reward those who shout and overlook those who endure. We chase influence but ignore wisdom. What Clara proved is that legacy isn't built in what you take up, but in what you leave behind, in the people you lift, in the lives you change when no one's watching. She could have screamed. She could have thrown their cruelty back in their faces, but she didn't. She walked, she built, she gave, and in doing so, she forced the world to reckon with what it almost threw away. So now ask yourself, who are you ignoring? Who have you judged too quickly? Who have you silenced with assumptions? What would change if you looked again, really looked, at the quiet women around you, the ones who fold your laundry, hold your babies, pray for you when you don't even know it? What if the next Clara is sitting in your living room right now, waiting for you to see her? Because sometimes justice doesn't come in a courtroom. Sometimes it comes in a story, and sometimes the story is a mirror. If Clara's story moved you, don't leave this video without taking action. Subscribe to the channel if you believe stories like hers deserve to be heard, not buried. Leave a like so the algorithm helps more people see this, and in the comments write, "I see you," because maybe that's all a woman like Clara ever needed, to be seen. And if this story reached you, there's another one on the screen right now, waiting for you. Click it. Let's keep honoring the voices that matter.